where the prayers were standing. And if y'all care to, if some of you care to mark it, for after Jared's talk tonight, we'll sing number 99. Savior, lead me lest I stray. And if you can remember, we'll sing the first 3 verses and save the chorus for last until one time. I'll remind everybody when we do that. Let's be standing, please.
Let us pray. Father in heaven, Lord, thank you for this wonderful day, Lord, that you've blessed us with. Even though it's cold outside, Lord, we thank you for it. Lord, we ask that you be with the families that have lost loved ones. We ask that you comfort them, Lord, in only the ways in which you can to help them get through their troubled times. Lord, we thank you for the good results of the medical procedures, that is, the information that has been given out and stuff. We pray for those that have had that, and also for the ones that have up and coming surgeries and treatments. We ask that everything go well with them, Lord. Lord, we ask that you be with the ones that can't be with us tonight due to the weather or just whatever's keeping them out. Lord, we ask that you be with them also. Lord, just let us go through the furthest this hour, Lord, and let our minds just open up, Lord, so we can take all your information into our heart and the things that is preached, and let us be strong enough to speak it out in public to others so that they may learn your goodness through us. In Jesus' blessed name we pray.
right, we will go on and get started tonight. Just kind of a reminder of where we are. We're on week number 11. On Sunday, we started Genesis chapter 22. We got through the first 8 verses, so we're going to be picking up there where we left off tonight. Just kind of a reminder, where we left off was, as we mentioned on Sunday, probably the most recognized story in the life of Abraham, which was when he was asked to offer his son Isaac as an offering. There's certainly a lot of lessons we can learn, and we had a lot of really good discussion on Sunday. So tonight, as we begin, we're going to begin where we left off on Sunday, which is in verse 9. So if I could get somebody to read verses 9 through 19. Genesis 22, 9 through 19.
When they came to the place of which God had told them, and Abraham built the altar there, and arranged the wood, and bound his son Isaac, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not stretch your hand out against the lad, and do nothing to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham called the name of the place, The Lord Will Provide. As it is said to this day, In the mount of the Lord it will be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven, and said, By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, indeed I will greatly bless you. I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is on the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. In your seed all nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba.
All right, thanks, Jerome. Where we left off on Sunday was on verse number 8, which on verse number 8, it said, it said God will provide the lamb for a burnt offering, is how Abraham addressed. And then in verse 13, we read, Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, before him was a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So this is one of those times that we can see the faith of Abraham and the fulfillment of God's promise, so close together. So just kind of starting kind of discussion tonight. What can we take away from these passages? Yes.
We always talk about the faith of Abraham. What about the faith of Isaac?
Yeah.
He's probably big enough and old enough to take his father in a duel. And he lets him tie him up and put him on an altar and knows good and well what he's going to do. It's obvious what he's going to do. I'd say we need to give him some credit for some faith too.
I agree with you 100%. To me, that's definitely a takeaway. And I think as we dig in a little bit later in the typology of Christ, I think we're going to see that really come through. BJ.
No, that's where I was going to ask if you were going to jump into typology now or later, and so I'll wait.
Okay.
Hold my comments.
All right. What other takeaways can we take away from this? Yes, Lake.
We can't leave until we say the word that was coined because of this incident, scapegoat.
Yeah. Not a term we use a lot, but
I just think, the lesson that has to resonate, there's nothing that we can hold back from
Mhm.
And, I mean, you know, God had asked Abraham to give his only son, knowing that all the things that God had told him were gonna come through Isaac, and yet here he was being asked to give him up. And, you know, whatever it is that's in, whatever burdens or things we're doing, or addictions, or the list goes on and on and on, there simply can be nothing that we aren't willing to give up to keep God and our service to him first.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The things that we put ahead of God so many times. Yes, BJ?
One thing that I think is really powerful about verse 12 is after Abraham is obviously about to sacrifice Isaac, he says, "Now I know that you fear God." I'll have a lot of conversations with people, and to try to dismiss their actions, they say something like, "Well, God knows my heart." Well, okay, but when did God know that Abraham truly feared him? It wasn't just that he knew Abraham's heart. Abraham's actions are a testimony to the legitimacy of a heart for God, a heart that truly believed in God. So when we have conversations with people about faith, about what real faith is not just about, intellectual assent. It's about action. It's about obedience. It's about a submission to the will of God. And that's when God knows that we truly fear him, when we're willing to bow the knee and submit and do what he's called for us to do.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent point, and I've never thought about using this as an example when people make that argument. I think that's a really good point. Yes, Carrie?
We read in earlier chapters that Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham as a wife.
Yep.
And through that union came a son. And that was Abraham's first son. But God is saying, this is your only son, which leads me to believe that God never recognized that marriage in the first place, and really didn't count Ishmael as a son of Abraham, even though biologically he was, because Isaac was always going to be the son of promise.
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought the same thing, because when you see the term only son, it really has to be that it wasn't recognized. Yes, Wayne?
You know, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, okay. If we were at an auction, you would have bid, so.
In this, Abraham never asked a question.
Mhm.
It's all, Abraham, you do this, and Abraham does it. There's not a question asked. In previous things, like with Sodom and Gomorrah, he asked all kinds of questions, you know. So, he's to the point where he accepts whatever God asks him to do. There's no question answer type of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because if you do think how in his mind this wouldn't have made sense, but he didn't question God, because you know that he deliberated. How can this be the child of promise if you're going to take his life? So obviously the faith really comes through. Yes.
And Christ had to come to that lineage.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah.
So that's why, that was another branch. She told him it couldn't come through.
Exactly. Yeah, it was going to come through the child of promise. Yeah. Yes, Tommy.
Another thing you can take out of it is God will always provide.
Mm-hmm. I think that's to me, one of the biggest takeaways. The thought that come to my mind actually was one of when BJ was teaching the class last Wednesday, and the story of Hagar and Ishmael when they were sent out, and Hagar was crying to God, and then it says that God opened their eyes, and if you look at verse 13, it says Abraham lifted up his eyes to see. So I don't know, just kind of a takeaway that I thought as well, kind of on that same line of God providing, is really opening up our eyes to see the provisions God is making for us. Is something else that we can kind of take away. And I I think so many times God's provisions are there, and a lot of times we don't have our eyes open to them. So that's, just kind of a thought that I had as well. Yes, Annette?
I hope I'm not wrong, but I feel like, I know with God dealing with Hagar and Ishmael, and then here with Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, all of it, with all of these people, he had given them his word, promises first.
Mm-hmm.
So when they went through these trials, they had hope if they remembered his word. And that's how he operates with us today. He has given us a promise, and that gives us hope. And that's the security that we're supposed to rely on to get through trials.
Very well said. Very well said.
I just think
And-
that the first thing, and I know it's not recorded, but I think the first thing that would have had to come to Abraham's mind was, why, let me be the sacrifice, not myself.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about those of us who have kids, that would be the first thing that would come to our mind. Take me, not my son, not
Yeah.
my child. And the story is just, just to think of it from a physical perspective is just so incredible. And just trying to put your, and again, God and Christ the same way, and just think of what, is getting ready to happen, and you're going to be the one who raises the knife
Yeah.
against your own.
Yeah, you're not just having to witness it, you're actually being asked to do it. Yeah.
It's so hard to fathom that.
Yeah, it's this is to me what's always made this account so, so real, is because especially, it's when you become a father, it hits you even differently, what Abraham must have went through. Carrie, did I see your hand?
Yeah, just one other thought I had is in verse 16, God says, because you have done this thing, I will bless you greatly. And he did this thing, meaning he obeyed God. And he was always doing his best to obey God. And I think that's the nature of God. God always blesses people that do their very best to please and obey him.
Yep. Also very well said. And between you and Annette, you have perfectly covered the next slide. So,
If you're up there and you've got a knife and you've got your son, think about the emotions that you've got running through your head too. And when it says in 13, he lifted his eyes.
uh-huh.
What do you think he was doing when he had his eyes down? He was about to sacrifice his
Yeah.
son. I would be bawling.
And can you imagine the range of emotion to when God stopped him? Imagine the relief that would just run all through your body. Like I say, to me, that's where this it's so real when we study it. So, any other thoughts before we move on? In verse 16. It says, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your only son. So what is the significance of God saying here, by myself I have sworn?
There's no one else you could swear upon.
Okay.
You know what I mean? He was the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who else could God swear by that would have more power and significance
Then-
than by his own name?
Yeah. I thought I saw Harold's hand, but maybe not. All right. As we talked about on Sunday, the parallels between Hebrews, how it does give almost a commentary for this. Hebrews 6, verses 17 and 18. So when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of promise the unchangeable character of his purpose, he guaranteed it with an oath. So by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, and we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope that is before us. So, you know, kind of going back to both Annette and Carrie's comments, you know, you can see, you know, we know that God doesn't lie. And we know that if he promises something, he's going to deliver. So that's the hope that we can have. You know, that's how we can obey through what sometimes is a tough situation or something that seems impossible to us. It's that faith in God, knowing that God, you know, it really would strengthen our faith. So, any other thoughts? All right, so pretty obvious question, but it says, in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. So how was the promise of 22 verse 18 fulfilled? So how would all nations of the earth be blessed?
Well, there's a good reference over in Acts chapter 3
Mm-hmm.
and verse 25. It says, you are the sons of prophets and of the covenant which God made with our fathers, saying to Abraham, in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And that has a relationship or a cross back to Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, BJ.
So there's a duality in how this is going to be fulfilled. There is a physical nature in which this will be fulfilled, and a spiritual nature.
Mm-hmm.
The physical nature is very clearly that ultimately this will culminate to the Messiah that will come through the line of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, that will ultimately bring salvation to all people. But I think the other aspect of this is when you look at what the text actually says, and it says, all nations on earth will be blessed by your offspring because you have obeyed my voice, you have obeyed my command. Abraham becomes the father of faith at this point. That faith is a willingness to trust and obey and submit to Jesus. And how are all these other nations going to be blessed and come into this relationship with Christ? And this is what Paul's going to spend a lot of time writing about. The sons of Abraham are not really those that are just biologically the sons of Abraham. It's those that demonstrate the same kind of faith as Abraham, and that is not secluded to the Jewish nation. That's going to be for all people of all times to demonstrate this kind of faith. And so Abraham is going to fulfill this in kind of a couple of different ways.
Mm-hmm. You can see you can see how it all pulls together there. And I think the other thing that really, kind of going back to the comment you made earlier, it's through that obedience that happens. So if you look at like Abraham's faith journey that we can read about, it's leading up to really that understanding that God will provide and that hope that can give to all of us. All right, if there's no other comments here, I kind of want to start touching on what I know BJ has been dying from the time we started on Sunday, but really compare and contrast Isaac and Jesus, the typology, if you will, between the two. So what are some things that we see in both accounts? Yes, Sandra.
I think one thing that I noticed is that from the time Isaac left with his father, he had a feeling, or seemed to have a feeling, that he might possibly be the sacrifice. I think that because he asked him, he said, we've got wood and we've got this and that, but where's the sacrifice?
Mm-hmm. Kind of goes to Terry's comment on the faith of Isaac as well. Yeah.
Christ knew that he came here to do that. That was his purpose for being here.
Yeah. Great point. Yes, BJ.
Well, in my opinion, Genesis 22 is the most messianic passage in all of the Old Testament, even more than Isaiah 53. when you look at all of the connections that take place here, of a promised son, of a miraculous birth, the only son that is loved, that is going to carry his own wood up on top of a mountain to be sacrificed upon. I mean, and all this is what Jesus would do too, who would carry his cross up to the mountain. And there's two things that stuck out to me this time that I've never caught before. One of them is going to be in verse 6 when it says, the two of them walk together. And in John 16, Jesus is telling the disciples that all of them are going to abandon him. He says, and yet I am not alone because the Father is with me. And so you have this picture of Isaac and Abraham walking together to this task. And that's what Jesus reassures his disciples is going to happen. The Father is going to walk with him to the cross. And helps us understand Jesus' words from Psalm 22 so much better than the Father had not abandoned him. He was with him the whole time. But then the other thing that really stood out to me was when you see the lamb that's provided, this ram that's provided, how is it provided? Its horns, its head is caught around thorns. And what do they place upon the lamb that's provided's head as they sacrifice him? But the lamb that is provided is crowned with a crown of thorns, just like the ram.
Yeah, that's another one I hadn't considered
so
yet.
many blatant, obvious pictures that I would have loved to have gone back in time and watched Paul read Genesis 22 and reason with people in the synagogue about how this is about Jesus. It just would have been so incredible to see the epiphanies and their dumbfoundedness of how this was the story of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, some really, really good points. What other thoughts?
Neither of them protest.
Yeah. Neither of them protest, definitely. Touched on, these are the kind of the ones that I kind of threw together. You know, obviously the child of promise, which we've mentioned, the miraculous birth. You know, Isaac was mocked by Ishmael. Jesus was mocked by the world. You know, the carrying the wood to the altar and carrying to the cross. The voluntarily submitting, I think Isaac, as we pointed out, most likely could have tried to escape, but did not. You know, they both were sacrificed outside of Jerusalem. The 3 days, you know, obviously Jesus was dead for 3 days, but to Abraham, the 3 days journey would almost been symbolic of the death. And you kind of see that in the in Hebrews 11 there when it says, as if he was resurrected from the dead. Yes, Sandra?
The brothers of Jesus didn't follow him initially, and neither did Isaac relate to Ishmael in the same way. Kind of parallel thing.
Yeah. What, anything else?
Both of them had faith in their fathers.
Yeah. Yeah, also very well said. All right, so let's continue for the time we have left we'll finish up chapter 22. If I could get somebody to read verses 20 through 24.
Now after these things, Abraham was told, Milcah also has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Uz, his firstborn, his brother was Kemuel, the father of Aram, Chesed Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel fathered Rebekah. Milcah bore these 8 to Nahor, Abraham's brother, his concubine, whose name was Bruma, also bore Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Makkah.
I always really enjoy the genealogy readings, which is the reason why I always ask somebody else to read them. What important name is on this list? not that they're all not important to the genealogy, but what's the name that you recognize?
Introduction to Rebecca.
Rebecca, yeah. And obviously, as we get into the next chapters, we'll kind of see that play out as well.
What gets me is the obvious sense of humor Nahor has, naming sons Uz and Buz.
Yeah, there you go. But you kind of see, this is sort of the epilogue of Abraham's life, and this is really where it's going to hand off to the future generations here. All right, so jumping into chapter 23, the first two verses says, Sarah lived 127 years, and these were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and wept for her. When we think about the story of Abraham and Sarah that we've gone over quite a bit in the last really almost 2 months, what impresses you the most about the story of Abraham and Sarah? Yes, BJ.
Something that I've never really thought about, I don't think I've studied Genesis like this in depth, for a while, like we have. And, when you're married to someone, you've got to make decisions together.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of decisions that Abraham called for Sarah to make, and some of them were bad decisions.
Yeah.
But some of them were faithful decisions, but still hard decisions. I think just looking at them as a couple, I think it's really incredible to see their growth together, and as they grew closer together, they grew closer to God. And that's one of the things that hopefully we can do in our marriages as well, is as we grow in our faith and our trust in God, it ultimately brings us closer together and prevents there being problems in our life, which were so frequent earlier on in their journey, that you don't see later on in their journey.
Truly the triangle, as you put God on top, grow closer together. Yes, Susan.
They were both raised by the same mother, or the same mothers,
Mhm.
together. And so they were raised up together. So they knew a lot about one another. They blended.
Yeah. I think we see, if we look back, it wasn't all perfect. I think there's definitely ups and downs in their story, which is to me something that we can take away. The other thing that kind of jumped out at me a little bit too is, it says Abraham went in to mourn for her. So to me, kind of a takeaway as well is that it's okay to mourn. And I think a lot of times, especially men will not let themselves do that. And I think we do see many examples in the Bible where, men mourned in this case. Yes, Wayne.
What kind of stands out to me is at this particular time, most men, if they had a barren wife, would take a second wife.
Mm-hmm.
And Abraham did not do that until later when Sarah insisted upon it. And, he didn't jump over fences to do it then.
Yeah.
It wasn't his idea. And I just think that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wasn't that concerned about having a child to follow him, or he would have taken him.
Would have done that, yeah, on his own. Yeah, that's a really good point. Anything else jump out at you guys when you consider? The other one I had thought, kind of going to sort of BJ's comment that he made. You certainly can see together they trusted God. And although we can argue maybe at times their faith wasn't perfect in understanding that God would provide, but they got to see the fulfillment of that. and you know that their faith grew so much as that was fulfilled. I think the other thing that we're going to see as we dig into the rest of this chapter is the effort that Abraham took to make sure that she had a proper burial also shows a great deal of love and respect that he had for her. And I think that comes out in part of what we're getting ready to go through. Any other thoughts?
I just wonder about the white elephant in the room, about Abraham and Sarah being half brother and sister. Isn't that kind of weird?
It certainly would be today.
Yeah.
That
I mean, we would really frown down on that today and not allow that to happen.
it is kind of strange, isn't it?
That's because the world was small then. I mean,
Yeah, it was different. Yeah.
It was different in reproduction and all that. But, I'm sorry, I lost.
No, but it is. But your point's very valid. Yeah. Yes, BJ.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that amongst scholars, and some of the best stuff that I've read basically discusses that, when God is populating the world and, man is in its purest form, when God first created them and they're living so long, that there were not the ramifications in, that would come from kinds of relationships like that today, at least genetically, biologically. And this is all just theories that people have, but, it's not until really the law comes along that God's going to lay down some basic ground rules of who you are permitted to marry and not marry. And enough time has passed and the world has become populated by that point that there's no more need for some relationships like that. And so what is so strange to us would have been extraordinarily common and needed in that period of time. Actually.
Yeah. Anything else? We need another 90 seconds worth of comments for me to end on time. So we're
I thought that was blown up.
Those nations where they ignore God's law, which came down later and said you should not marry your sister or your
Yeah.
cousin, first cousin, whatever. There were still nations where they were marrying brother and sister, and they all became weaker because of it. And so, God understood because He created.
He created it. Yeah.
Hard not to understand what
Yeah.
you're the creator,
Yeah.
what can happen.
All right. We will pick up Sunday in chapter 23, beginning in verse 3. So we'll finish up chapter 23 on Sunday and then jump into chapter 24. So appreciate everybody, and Mark, you're more than able to ring that bell for me.
So what I want to talk about tonight is I want to look into, do just a little bit of a deepish dive into 1 Corinthians 13 and in verse 13. In 1 Corinthians 13:13 it says, "So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love." And I want to kind of look at the love and hope. And when it says the greatest of these is love, I have to ask myself, well, what makes love the greatest out of all three of these? And I look at, my life and what I've been blessed with, and I can see God's love in the things that I have. My family, my church family, my health, my job. All these are great blessings that come from God. And His love and His mercy, because, I wasn't always a Christian, but His long suffering stayed with me long enough until I obeyed the gospel. So, to me, that is what love is from God. And if you look in 1 John chapter 4, beginning in verse 7, it says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love." So when I think back of, what makes, out of those three, why is love the greatest? It said, to me, it says right there in 1 John 4 and in verse 8, because God is love. That's what makes, in my eyes, that's what makes love the greatest out of all those. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what does love look like? Well, if you look over in, again, 1 Corinthians 13, starting in verse 4, it says, "Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. Love is not arrogant. Love is not rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." And then the very first line in verse 8 says, "Love never ends." God's love for us never ends. He has a never-ending love. Now, I know a lot of people get that confused with if they're living in a sinful life and they say, well, God loves me. Yes, God does love you, loves that person, but not the sin that they've created or that they're living in. And I know that's one thing that we have to, when we talk to people that are outside the faith and stuff, that's one thing that they constantly want to bring up. So that's one thing that, we have to remember, that yes, God loves us and He'll never quit loving us, but He doesn't love our sin. And then when I look at the hope, so now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but love is the greatest. Well, when I look at hope, the first verse that comes to my mind when I think of hope is Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And that's where our hope lies. Our hope lies within Jesus Christ. We don't have hope for anywhere else. It tells us that He is the way, and there is no other way through Him. And it also, we sing that song, Solid Rock. The very first line in that song is, "My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' love and righteousness." And when you think of somebody, the world, when it presses down on us, because it is an evil world, it's hard on the young kids at school, the pressure that they face. It's hard on adults who are struggling or who have struggles, who are maybe weak in the faith, who just need help, or who are going through some stuff. The only thing, the world presses on to them, and really sometimes the only thing that they can hold on to is the hope because tomorrow is not promised to us. It's not a guarantee. It's not, oh, your family was a member of the church. It's not a written free card that, well, you're automatically in. The only thing we can cling to is our hope that if we do God's will and we do what He says and do what's right, that we will have that hope of eternal life with Him. So if you're here tonight and you've not accessed that hope, if you've not turned to Him, I'm begging you, make tonight the night. Because, like I said, tomorrow is not promised. You could walk right out these doors and you could be gone in the blink of an eye. So if you've not obeyed the gospel, or if you have and you just need the prayers of the congregation or prayers, please come forward. Reach out to us, and we're here to help. And we always have that hope and that love for one another. So if you're subject to the call, won't you come as we stand and as we sing?